Devin Graves coming to you once again from Studio D, and today we're comparing mic preamps. We're going to compare the classic Neve 1073 with the stock preamps on the Audient iD44. We're going to go a little beyond that though, because when I use the Neve, I'm also going to be engaging some of the EQ. I'm going to be running into compression with some classic compressors. So we're going to see how this full channel strip, everything in use, stacks up against the stock mic preamps on the Audient iD44. Now I'm going to do two separate tests because I'm going to be playing acoustic guitar and singing. And on the acoustic guitar, I'll just leave the channel strip flat. I won't engage any EQ or any compression, so you can at least compare preamp to preamp directly. But what I want to do is, since I record my voice with a little bit of EQ, with some compression, and I'll tell you about that, going in on your recording with that is a big game changer. But what I want to do is I want to see how close we can get by using just the stock preamp and use plugins that emulate the very gear that I'm using on the way in. So let's see how it goes. To perform this test, I want to be able to judge the sound of the same performance so that we're not fooled by a better performance or a worse performance. So I'm using a matched set of Neumann U87s. These mics sound pretty much identical. The bottom one is going into the Neve. The top one is going directly into the iD44. Now I have it set up to where if I'm singing, I'm aiming my mouth directly at this line between the two microphones. And if I'm playing guitar, that spot gets put right at the neck joint where the neck meets the body on the guitar, and also equal distance, high and low. So we're going to hear what it sounds like comparing a high-end channel strip in use with flat, good quality modern mic preamp directly on an audio interface. Okay, so I've come over here to the analog channel strip that I'm using, and this is a serious channel strip that I'm going through. It starts here with a Neve 1073 DPX. I'm going into the top channel with one of the mics, and I have the EQ engaged. I'm using, I guess, 2 dB of boost on the high shelf filter, which is a 12 kilohertz filter. And then on the mid frequency at 3.2 kilohertz, I'm boosting just a smidge, 1 dB. I'm not doing anything on the low filter. And the high pass filter, I'm cutting down at 80 hertz. Now I have the insert engaged, and the first thing that this will go to is an LA2A style. This is an optical T4 style compressor. Then after that it goes into an FET type compressor. This is an 1176. This is a stereo unit. I'm going into one side here. Typically I have this stereo Neve patched with this dual channel 1176 on the inserts. But on the main vocal channel, I'm also going through the T4 circuit on this compressor here. This unit is actually a mic preamp and compressor in its own right, but in this case, I'm only using the T4 optical compressor in my signal chain. I have the pre-switch engaged so that this compression is actually going before the EQ, and then it's being EQ'd after the fact. So that mega channel strip I showed you is being fed into the first channel in the Audient. And the second microphone is going just directly into the mic preamp of channel 2 on the iD44. Okay, let's get into some recording. I'm going to record the first verse of a song called Hanging on a String. I'm going to do acoustic guitar, then I'm going to do vocals. I'm not going to play the whole song because we really don't need that long of a piece of music for the sake of this comparison, but I hope you enjoy. riding on an endless carousel of wishes, hopes and dreams, and it seems that I lose more than I gain. All the same, I remain hanging on a string. Is it strong? Will it save me from the fall? Or will it just be broken by the wind as it spins? All I say seems to just get taken all away. Okay, so now we're sitting at Pro Tools here. And before we get into this, I want to actually get across a certain mindset. To me, plugins are for mixing, and channel strips are for recording. In principle, since those plugins are emulating specific analog hardware, it seems to me like having the actual analog hardware is always going to put you where you want to be. When you come to mixing, you want to have a recording that is free of all possible flaws, free of all problems. As much as possible, that track should be in a near finished state. On a good channel strip, you have the same facilities you would have on a mixing console, and so you can actually mix going in. And theoretically, your recording will sound good just when you turn it up. So with that in mind, we're going to go to the editing window in Pro Tools here. I'm using my Mac M1 with a current, I think, Pro Tools 2021, and the Audient iD44 as my interface. Now, what I mean by recording it well doesn't necessarily mean EQ or compression or anything. It depends what you're recording. But for vocals in particular, this is where it really matters the most, because the voice has a huge dynamic range. You can sing very quietly, then you can belt out loud, and there's only so much you can do by moving away from the microphone. Depends on the room you're in, whether that's going to work to a big extent, but also the mic just sounds different when you're singing further away. You get up close, it gets real bassy, you back off and it gets thinner and thinner. So by use of compression, you can tame those peaks down. When you get loud, it quiets those peaks down, and then you get a more overall balanced signal. And if you get it on the audio recording that way, you give yourself tons of headroom because nothing's poking up near zero while something else is really down there quiet. And that would be one of the problems that you would have to fix in mixing. And when you're mixing, you don't want to be fixing problems. You want to just take something that sounds good and blend it together and hopefully make it sound even better. And to do this with vocals, it actually is an age-old trick to use two compressors, one that's slower and then followed by one that's faster, and have each one doing about half the work. The two most popular methods would be using a VCA compressor and then follow it by a FET compressor like an 1176. Or people also like using a optical compressor, which is also slower and smoother, into that same FET, that 1176 style compressor. And when you do that, you have to have really good compressors to pull that off. And so there's no inexpensive way to do that. Let's take a look at this edit window here. Now you'll see the tracks. This is the vocal through the 1073. This is the vocal through the iD44. And this is the guitar through the 1073 and the guitar through the iD44. And if you look at the vocals, here's what I mean. Like where I was singing without any compression, you can see that word just pops way out. This part gets louder here. This part pops way out. And these things that do that are going to sound very distracting, as you'll hear. And it will sound quite unprofessional. Now, of course, we will fix these issues with the plugins, and we'll use the same plugins that emulates the gear that I used going in. We're going to see how close we can get. But as a mindset, I'm already going into this mix knowing, without even hearing it, knowing that I'm going to be dealing with problems and I'm going to have to solve these problems. This track, I could just turn it up and turn it up and turn it up. The quiet parts and the loud parts are very well balanced. Let's hear what it sounds like. First, we're going to hear the 1073 with the vocal and the guitar. That's actually what you were hearing when I was doing the recording process. And here it is again.
Riding on an endless carousel of wishes, hopes and dreams, and it seems that I lose more than I gain. All the same, I remain.
Okay, now let's hear the iD44 and watch for those peaks.
Riding on an endless carousel of wishes, hopes and dreams, and it seems that I lose more than I gain. All the same, I remain.
This one here was a real problem. But not only were these things jumping out, I noticed a huge difference in the sound. The 1073 sounded more forward, more mid-rangey, more present, and of course more even dynamically. The iD44 to me sounded kind of soft, kind of like muffled. I'll just go back and forth. I'm going to start again with the 1073, and I'll just flip back and forth.
Riding on an endless carousel of wishes, hopes and dreams, and it seems that I lose more than I gain. All the same, I remain. Hanging on a string, is it strong? Will it save me from the fall?
I want to go to this part here and hear the iD44.
Is it strong? Will it save me from the fall? Or will it just be broken by the wind?
So you see, not only are the loud parts much more in control, but the quiet parts are actually louder. So what's happening is the vocal is ducking out and then coming in and then punching you in the face and then ducking out again. So to me, there's no comparison. Whether or not you like the EQ curve I used or you prefer the soft sound here, maybe just bypass the EQ altogether. And that's what I did on the guitars. Now, let's go to the guitars, because this is going to be just preamp to preamp. There's no compression, there's no EQ on the 1073, and we're just going to hear if there's any difference at all. We'll start with the 1073. Let's go ahead and start from the beginning. 1073. I thought I'd give the 1073, the last word there. Now that's not a make or break situation there. I personally definitely prefer the 1073. There's a more distinct tonal scape with the strings that I just don't quite hear with the iD44. I'm going to try that again. To me, there's no comparison. I'm using a lot of gain on the input on that 1073, but I'm not hearing distortion. I'm just hearing a much richer tone. I'm hearing the tone that the guitar sounds like rather than just the notes the strings are playing and the attack of the string, if you get what I mean. So instinctively with this iD44, I mean, it's very, very good. It's probably a lot quieter than the Neve. In fact, let's check that out. Let's check that out. I'm going to just check room noise. It's probably going to be louder than the mic preamp noise, but my suspicion is that the 1073 will have more noise. 1073. iD44. Again, iD44. 1073. Yeah. It's definitely a little noisier. If I was mixing the 1073, you get pretty much all you need. You know, if I wanted to EQ the guitar, I might do that, but I wouldn't make that decision with these earbuds in. I might reduce slight amounts of the around 250 hertz, 300 hertz, somewhere in there. I would turn that down slightly and maybe bring up a little of the upper mid, maybe. But if I did that, what I would do is then I would go and re-record that with such settings on the channel strip that I'm using. But now what I want to do is I want to see how close I can come to the analog hardware. I've already put in the plugins, and I've actually I started with a Sheps channel, and all I have that for is a little bit of that transformer sound that I get from the 1073. It's just my attempt to introduce the sound of those iron transformers. Then I used the optical compressor, and I was using an LA2A style compressor, so I have LA2A compressor here. And let's start there, and I'm going to set the compression. And when you're setting your compression for your vocal, the best thing to have it is when you're singing your quietest, that this needle is doing nothing. Now, when I was showing you this analog channel strip that I was using, I was actually speaking through a microphone into that channel strip, and if you noticed, there were no needles moving on those compressors. And even if I was saying like the first line of this song, it wouldn't get into any compression, except for maybe at the word endless.
Riding on an endless carousel of wishes, hopes, and dreams, and it seems that I lose more than...
That word lose sounded quite grainy. I think there's a little too much compression there. Let me turn the peak reduction down a little bit. Right there. That's where it would be. It would be on my compressor somewhere around 5 to 7 at the most.
Hopes and dreams, and it seems that I lose more than I gain. All the same, I remain.
Okay, so this is the setting, the input to output ratio that I actually always start with on an 1176, and that's how my hardware unit is set up to begin with.
Hopes and dreams, and it seems that I live.
It's a little heavy-handed. The attack is about at this spot on my hardware unit, so that's where I have it. Here, the release is just as fast as possible. Okay, yeah, that's definitely sending too much in.
Riding on an endless carousel of wishes, hopes and dreams, and it seems.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. This is an emulation of the same 1073 EQ section. And the settings I made on the hardware unit were the high-pass filter was set at 80 Hertz. I did nothing with the low filter. The medium frequency was at 3.2 kilohertz and just a 2 dB up, a dB and a half, just barely put in. And the 12, I set this at 12K on the high frequency because that is what the high frequency band filter is on the 1073. And again, just 2 dB maybe. I don't even know how many dB it is on the unit because I just put it to the first little dot over from 0. I assume that's a dB, so maybe 1 or 2 at the most. So let's hear what it sounds like. We have everything in line, and let's start with the 1073.
Riding on an endless carousel of wishes, hopes and dreams, and it seems that I lose more than I gain. All the same, I remain hanging on a string. Is it strong? Will it save me from the fall? Or will it just be broken by the wind as it spins? All I say seems to just get taken all away.
I'm still hearing a little more air off the 1073. But this is pretty shockingly close all of a sudden. I still prefer the air off the 1073, but I must admit this sounds pretty darn close. We're at least in the ballpark. So what can I say at this point? I still prefer the on the guitar. Let me see if I can get any closer by putting that Sheps channel just for the iron. Let's see if that does anything for us. Let me go to the mix window here. And we'll go, I'll copy this and put it here. I'm going to go back and forth between the 1073 and the iD44, and then I'm going to go back and forth toggling bypass on this Sheps channel. Let's see what difference it makes. We'll start with a 1073. helps. It gets it closer. All of these plugins, it got me closer to the analog hardware. It didn't get me all the way there, and if I could pick one, of course, I'd pick the analog as far as sound goes, but your opinion might be different. You might like this just as much. You might not hear any difference at all between them. I do, and I'm hearing them in just some live in-ear monitors. I can't use my audio monitors here or else it just spills into the microphone. So you reach your own conclusions. You decide for yourself if it's worth the expense to get the analog stuff. So software is a viable option. If that's all you got, do it. You might even have good results recording into the plugins. If you did it in Pro Tools, you actually have to make a second track and feed the output of the track with the plugins into the new track and record on, well, I'd record on both tracks so you have a backup, a safety backup, and you can go through the same chain of plugins and record that way and print that way. Or you can save your money if that's an option for people. There's a lot of other options besides what I have. I got the classic stuff because that was what I know, and I could buy it sight unseen pretty much and know that it's going to do the job. But since I made my investment so long ago, a lot of companies come out using the same sort of components, making very similar hardware, and you can do it at a fraction of the cost. So let me know your opinion. It is important to listen to this comparison on good studio monitors or good headphones or something. If you're using an iPhone or something like that, you might not hear the differences that are really there. Okay, but I would like to hear your opinion. What do you think? Is it worth the expense to have hardware? Can you do it with software just as good? Good enough? You decide. Let me know. Please, if you like this video, please hit like and please hit subscribe if you haven't done so, and join the tribe. There's a link down below in the description. You can receive content from me anytime I put out a new video. It'll go straight to your inbox. The plan is that there will be even exclusive content only to the tribe. And so get on over there, sign up, and I hope to see you soon. So with that, I bid you a good day, and until next time.